Welcome back to another video where we're building a very simple Bank of America application where you can deposit something. I deposit $18. My balance was $100 and now I have $118. Again, this is just a random number that you can deposit money on, and we have a withdrawal function which is pretty clear, self-explanatory. We draw $5. We had $120 and now our balance is $124. We can withdraw again until we kind of get that balance all the way down. So what did we do in the last video? Well, in the last video, we went ahead and kind of at least get the very simple little layout using Bootstrap. Okay, we used the Bootstrap Create React app. If you haven't watched that out, please go ahead and kind of watch that part to make sure that you get to where we are today. So what are we doing in this video? Well, in this video, nothing worked. Well, in this app, nothing worked. If I click, it doesn't know how to do nothing. So, well, in this video, we're gonna focus on at least gonna get the core functionality out of the way, just to kind of use the hook and kind of just plug it in. Okay, that's what we're going to be focused on. Okay, so what we're going to do is React. Remember, what are React hooks? React hooks are just function that let you hook into the React state and life cycles that you can do a lot of things with. Now you might be Sterling, I completely lost. I have no idea of what you just said. In other words, if you were used to use React before, in order to get state, we have to use a class component. But now we can do that using a functional component, which is just a function using React hooks. So in another word, we are definitely using the hooks API just to kind of get everything out of the way. Okay, the hooks we're going to be using is something called useReducer. If you take a look at here, we got two hooks here, which is one useState and useReducer. Both of these two will get the job done of what we are trying to do. However, useReducer is a little bit more advanced and kind of allow you to kind of get your global state and really manage everything for a very big or medium-sized application. If it is something very simple, you can just use useState, but useReducer really kind of give you that flavor of Redux if you've worked with Redux before. Too much talking, let's kind of go back to our application. So what we'll need is use that hooks. I'm gonna come here and useReducer. This is where I come and start bringing the hooks I need from React. If you wanted the other one, you can just use a useState. We don't need that one. We're gonna be building everything with using useReducer. useReducer, if you've used Redux before, it literally works the same way as if you were writing Redux. So we'll need a function here called Reducer. I'm gonna show you how that function looks in a second. This function takes a total of 2 parameters, a state in action, and then it takes a street here that we're going to be checking for the action type. Okay, so here we're going to be like, all right, so if the action that type that I'm checking for, I'm going to give it a first case, is it equal to whatever, and if it is, I'm just going to come here and return something. For now, I'm just going to return an object. Then the second thing, I'm gonna copy here and kind of do another state again. This is just us checking for different state. And then lastly, if everything we check for did not meet the criteria, then we're gonna just come here and return our state. Now at this point, you might be Sterling, I think I'm lost. Don't worry, we're gonna explain everything we're doing. Just we want to make sure that at least you guys are following along. So far we have the reducer, okay, and that reducer is going to check for action. It's just checking and saying, hey, is this the right action? In this case, I'm gonna name this action something called deposit. If this reducer going to listen for any action that is called deposit, and if that's the case, it's gonna go ahead and kind of do something. I'm gonna talk about what it's gonna do in a second. The second action that it's gonna search for or listen for is something called withdraw, and if this happens, it's gonna go ahead and kind of do something. So basically, that's what we have right now. And if either none of them, either we do not have the deposit or the withdraw action that fire, then by default we're just gonna return whatever the state was within our application. Okay, so you need that. That's going to be the one that changed the data that you have within your useReducer. That's what gonna manipulate the data and make that decision to change it or not. So how do we use that useReducer? The way we use it is we come here. That useReducer is going to give us or to return an array that contains two values. The first one is the state, and then the second one is the dispatch. We're going to talk about that in a second on how they work. Just bear with me for now, and here's where we want to focus. What is that useReducer? That useReducer, again, it is a hook that takes a total of two parameters. The first one, it takes the reducer itself. Again, the reducer we're talking about is this function, which means I can literally come and plug this function in there, but that looks a little bit ugly. That's why we kind of separate it and kind of put that function somewhere where we can see it. So I'm gonna just pass it the function name right there. The second one is the initial value, the initial state we want to start with. For that one, I'm gonna have an initial state here. So I'm gonna start having some initial state here, which is some value on how we want our state to look like or to be. So I'm gonna have a key value pair here called deposit amount. I'm gonna set that one to 0. I'm gonna have something called withdraw, set to 0, and then total, I'm gonna set it by default, which is 100. And then I'm gonna have another property here called isDeposit. I'm gonna set it to false. I'm gonna have another one is withdraw to detect if the user is withdrawing. I'm gonna set this one to false. So this is going to be what we needed for now, just to kind of get everything out of the way. So we're gonna pass that initial state right there inside the hooks. So the bottom line is that we use Reducer. We're gonna be leveraging a two parameter with it called Reducer. Again, that Reducer, it is the function that we just built from here. And then we're gonna use the initial value, which is initial state that we want to work with, which is that entire state. So far, I hope that you're good, but the question you might be asking yourself is, what the heck is this function? How does this work, and how do we work with it? I'm gonna give you guys an example first before we focus about this function. But how do we use this function, or how do we know things inside of it? What I'm gonna do in this case is I'm gonna just console log a couple of things for you guys to see what's happening. So I'm gonna console log the action that's coming in, and I'm also gonna be console log the state, just for you guys to see what happened when this function got invoked. But how do we invoke this function? How do we call this function? Well, the way that we call this function, if you remember that useReducer, we turn to us to a value. The first one is state, the second one is dispatch. Well, the dispatch one, we need, that's how we invoke that function that is inside there. So I'm gonna dispatch this function right there. But the other question you might be asking yourself, what the heck is the action? Well, the action is whenever you use the dispatch function right here, whatever you pass within that dispatch is the action. So let's take a look. If I come within that dispatch and pass an object, and I'm going to give this one a type called, let's assume that this one is called deposit. I'm going to give this one a payload. And that payload, I'm going to give it probably 20, not number 20. What's going to happen in this case is we literally just dispatch an action. Yes, we literally just dispatch an action. So if we save that, and if I open my console again, so if I go here and I'm going to right click into this, I'm going to go inside inspect and go under console. Now, of course, we see an error. Don't worry, I'm gonna show you guys what's happening. Okay, so you can see here too many read render happen at the same time. We end up having an infinite loop. I'm gonna explain you what's happening in this case in a second. So the fact that we are every single time that we dispatch, something happened, like this here happened or whatever here happened, and then the state got updated. When the state got updated, that means this got re-rendered over and over. So every single time that it re-render, everything that is here is being run over and over. So that means every single time that it got runs, we are dispatching forever until we have an infinite loop, which we're gonna show you how we can resolve that in a second. But let's take a look and see what happened when we dispatch something. Here's the action. The action is literally what we just dispatched. Whatever we pass in here, this is what the action is. So this action represents whatever we are dispatching. dispatching in here. Okay, so what about the state? If we take a look at the state, well, the state represent whatever initial value that we pass inside the useReducer. So here's the useReducer. If you remember, we passed that initial state here. This is what we pass in there, and then that's what the state represent. Okay, if you remember, this is where we are logging the state. So in another word, this state data here represent that initial value that is being passed here, and then the action represent whatever is being passed within the dispatch. I know this might looks confusing, but don't worry, we're gonna do an example together. So in this case, what I'm gonna do in this case is I'm gonna do a couple things. Whenever we dispatch an action, we're gonna check for the type of that action. If it is something equal to deposit, we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna make a copy of the state, and then we're going to be updating a value here, which is the total. So we're going to be updating the total. Whenever we are depositing something, we're going to make a copy of the state, update this total, and then we're going to take whatever the total was plus whatever is coming within that action. If you remember the action, where is it? The action, this is the action that's going to come, and this is going to be the payload, which of course is 20. So what we're doing is, all right, take whatever we had within the total and plus it whatever we are coming within the action. And then the last thing, if you remember, every single time that we deposit something, for example, if I come here, it knows exactly the amount that we deposit. Well, the way that we also need to keep a track of that, and this is the value that's keeping a track of that right there. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to copy this value. I'm going to come here and say, all right, whatever that we pass within this payload, this is what the updated value is going to be. For example, if we deposit $20, then the updated value is going to be $20. If we deposit $50, then the updated deposit amount is going to be $50, and so on. So that's basically going to be it. And for the withdrawal process, if you think about it, we're literally going to be doing the same process. So we're going to make a copy of the state, whatever we had in the state. We're going to be updating the total because the total is going to be the one that contains the balance. So in this case, I'm going to take whatever the total was, which is state.total, and instead of adding, and this is the deposit section, if you are in this already, instead of adding, we're going to be subtracting. So we're going to say state.total subtracting whatever is coming within the payload. And then in this case, we also want to keep a track of whatever value that we withdraw. So I'm going to take the withdraw amount. So I'm going to come here and take the withdraw amount and pull it from the action payload. Again, the payload is going to be, for example, this one is going to be withdraw, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to take the payload value here, which is going to be 20 value, whatever value that we withdraw. So basically that's it. We are completely done with this, right? But how do we test this? How do we make sure that this is working? Well, in order to make sure that this is working, we're going to fire that whenever we click on those two buttons, the deposit and withdraw. We just need to console log and see what we are seeing to make sure that everything is working as expected. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to go within the button, wherever we have the button, I'm going to be attaching and click event on them. So I'm going to say whenever we click on this button right there, so I'm going to say I'm going to set up a function here. So I'm going to say, all right, whenever we click, we're going to dispatch those action. And if you remember, this action had deposit, just to kind of give you an example, and then the type is deposit and withdraw, and then we're going to pass it a payload. The payload is going to contain the value, and let's just assume for now it's just 20. Remember, we're going to have a random number in the future, but for now let's just say it is 20. And also, instead of deposit in the second one, which is the withdraw, we're gonna say this is gonna be a withdraw instead of the deposit. So basically what we should be able to see right now, we should be able to kind of see that, hey, whenever we click on the deposit button, we are dispatching this action with $20. Whenever we click on the withdraw, we are dispatching an action with $20 as well. Again, make sure that you use that arrow things to make sure that you're not getting yourself into an infinite loop. And then lastly, we want to see the value of the updated state. Whatever the state is, we want to see if the state is being updated. So I'm going to come here and say, hey, this is going to be the state, and I'm going to come above and remove that state right there to not confuse anything. We're still going to leave the action for you to see that in Excel. So let's test it. Let's hopefully it works. So what we're expecting to see, every single time that we click the deposit function, we are dispatching an action, and whenever we dispatch an action, the reducer is gonna listen to it and update the state with the correct value. So let's take a look. So here's the app right now. As you can see, here's the state that I have, the state load, the page load, that's what we have. So when I do deposit, check it out. An action happened, which is the deposit action happened with the payload 20. And then now check out this, the state got updated with $20 and our total just got updated to 140. And again, this is just the same console log that has been there. So if I click it again, the same thing happened, and this time we got updated with a total of 160, which is really awesome. The last thing I'm gonna do in this video is the total is updated correctly, which means I can just go ahead and kind of display that total here instead. Okay, so what I'm gonna do in this case is wherever we have this total, this is where we have the total listed instead of having the harded value. So I'm gonna come here. Remember the two value we had from the useReducer, which is the dispatch and state. Well, the state one contains the value of everything, which is contain the value of whatever that is here that is being updated. So we're gonna take that state. I'm gonna come here and use the bracket. I'm gonna say state dot total, or the total, which is the value. I'm gonna add a $sign right there, a $sign, and then I'm gonna add USD. So that should update instantly. So let's take a look. So if I come here and do deposit, you see now it's 120, deposit 140, and if I go withdraw 140, it kind of go minus, which is really good. But remember, in our example, when we deposit something, it shows us an entire message with the amount that we withdraw, and so show that, hey, what our balance was and what our updated was, right? So in the next video, we're going to be focused in making sure that we get this logic out of the way.